Hello everyone and welcome back to another book review. First of all, if you are new here, I post a new book review almost every single day, so if you're looking for some reading inspiration, for some reading recommendations for the summer months, then maybe stick around. Now let's talk about today's book. Today I am going to be reviewing Guardian of Fukushima, which is a comic by Ewen, Blain, and Fabien Grolleau. Here are their names. I may be pronouncing them incorrectly. They'll be in the information below in case I am, and advanced apologies if those are not said correctly. So I found this book on the new shelf of my library and I was intrigued. So I already knew the name Fukushima, and I was correct in assuming this was in regards to the Fukushima Daiichi power plant nuclear disaster that occurred in 2011. It's kind of interesting to think about this event in 2011 because I remember when it happened, and I feel like there was a time in my life where history was something that happened in the past, as in outside of my memory span, like before I was born, and now there are things that happened in the past that I also remember happening. So definitely getting older there. But this event, which happened in 2011, was the failure of a power plant or a nuclear power plant in Japan following an earthquake and then a tsunami. So there was a power plant, a nuclear power plant in Japan that was supposed to be resistant to tsunamis and earthquakes. However, Japan in 2011 experienced a historic earthquake, which led to a huge, like 45 foot, somewhere in there, tsunami, which wound up overwhelming the defenses that had been set up, leading to a nuclear disaster. So there have been other nuclear disasters in human history. The most memorable, I would say, would be probably Chernobyl, but this is another one that happened in my lifetime and that I remember happening, even though I don't think when it happened in 2011, I really grasped the seriousness of what was going on at that time. So this book is a non-fiction comic, as I mentioned, and it's written in that Belgian French comic style, but it is a story that takes place in Japan. So I didn't read a little bit about this before going into the book, and I read that the authors wanted to have this combination of the Japanese story, in essence, with the French-Belgian comic style. So that blending was going to be interesting. But they also wanted to focus not on the story overall. So this isn't a story necessarily on, or the focus of the story isn't on how the power plant failed or what measures were taken to contain the fallout of the power plant, but it focuses primarily on one individual who is Naoto Matsumura, which I'll have his name down below too because I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. And this was a farmer who lived in the area around the Fukushima Daiichi power plant that became part of the exclusion zone after the disaster, who decided to stay and devote his life to taking care of animals that had been left behind. In this story, though, the authors didn't want to just tell a factual story, a factual telling of the events that happened and what led to this farmer deciding to stay. They also wanted to mix in some Japanese myth and folklore. And that was something that when I first went into this book, I was a little bit skeptical about. I felt like the story had enough in and of itself, just with this farmer who was choosing to devote himself to a cause following this disaster and his decision to stay in a zone that was deemed not safe for human habitation. And I felt like maybe I was worried that the addition of the folklore and the mythology would take away from the story. But I really have to give credit where credit is due, and that is that Ewen, Blain, and Fabien Grolleau really, the addition of the Japanese myth and folklore do not detract at all from the story, and I actually personally think they add to the story. It's not overdone, it's not heavy-handed, but they are brought in just at the right time to kind of add something to the story that I think really enhances the whole read. As mentioned, this is not a telling of what happened particularly or specifically, or the focus isn't on the disaster necessarily, although the disaster is a main part. The focus is on this farmer who decides to stay behind or actually return to the exclusion zone and care for animals left behind. So after this big disaster, there were a lot of animals that were used to being taken care of by humans, such as livestock, dogs, cats, that were abandoned when the need arose to quickly evacuate. And this individual has gone back and decided to devote his life to living in this exclusion zone and taking care of these animals that need to be cared for because their previous owners have left or evacuated. This is an excellent story. I highly, highly recommend. I took it out because I found it interesting and it referenced something that I had remembered hearing about in the early 2010s, but hadn't read too much about since then. It makes me want to learn more about this disaster now that I'm an adult. I think I was probably an early teen when this happened, so I feel like I didn't grasp some of the importance of it, and after reading this, it makes me want to go back and actually learn more about the disaster. But this story was really focused on human actions in the face of a disaster and the personal choices we all make, and I feel like the story just came together with the right amount of additions of folklore, mythology. The comic itself was really well done, the characters were really compelling, and the fact that this is a comic about a non-fiction event means that it's inspiring, because you're not just reading about a fictional character who feels very compelling, but it's a real individual whose actions can inspire, and I feel like it just takes it to the next level. So yes, I highly, highly recommend this. If you're looking for a comic to read, or you want to try out comics, but maybe you veer a little bit more towards the nonfiction and aren't sure where to start, I feel like this is a great comic to start with. I really enjoyed the story. I think even if you are familiar with the incident that happened, this could be a good comic to read, because it just provides another more detailed perspective. If you're just a fan of comics, you might like this. I just think it was really well done overall. I think it's going to reach a wide variety of audiences, and I really have to give credit to the two authors, or I assume author and artist, behind this work, because they've produced something that's really well done and that I am giving a 5-star. If you have any thoughts or if you have any thoughts or comics you want me to read, then please let me know. Thoughts or comments on this book, things I should read in the future, what you thought about this, anything like this that you think I might enjoy, please let me know in the comments below. I love hearing your suggestions. I do try to get to all of them, so please let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest